Did the Giants turn Danny Dimes into Danny Done Dirty? I think they did. We'll talk about it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Right, it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Welcome to Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I got my brother here today with me, filling in a little bit for Matt Williamson, my man Gino Camilleri. I always say that wrong. You know, every time I say your name, man, I put the L in front of the M and I say Calamari. I don't know why I do that, but we'll get to that in just a second. What Gino and I are going to go over today, A-Rich Redemption in Indy. Do they have a chance to make the playoffs? I don't know, but they're going to go to their young gunner to try to make a run. Right in the middle, Justin Herbert. Is Justin Herbert an MVP candidate, and can he make a push? That's a very good question. We're going to start at the top with Daniel Jones fiasco in New York. Julian Council kind of mentioned it Monday, but now it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And we'll have to investigate that today with my man Gino. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Also, make sure you tap in to Locked On NFL on Amazon Music. That's right. Listen to every episode of Locked On NFL now on Amazon Music. Gino, we're going to talk, you cover the Eagles, cover the NFL, but we're going to talk a little bit of NFC. I love doing this. I love starting trouble. See, this is what we do. I know exactly who the gossips about what they're gossiping about. So let's go to New York. We're going to kick them when they're down a little bit. The Giants and Daniel Jones, benching him, and apparently this has some stuff to do with possibly saving money on the salary cap just in case he gets hurt. Give me your assessment now of what you think is going on in New York.
I think they're penny pinching right now. Like, why don't they go to Drew Lock? They don't want to pay him that money for those game time bonuses. It seems like Daniel Jones, the experiment, has kind of run out there as well. And I think Joe Shane and Brian Daboll kind of want to wipe their hands of Daniel Jones and say, hey, that wasn't us. That was Gettleman. Like, give us a chance. Give us a chance to go and get a quarterback. Now, the way that they're doing it currently, putting Daniel Jones at scout team safety, even putting him there just to move him around. Oh, that's a tough look inside the locker room. I don't know how guys respond to that inside a locker room, like the Bryce Young situation when you see a former high round pick get benched. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty at the top between Mr. Mara, between Joe Shane, between Brian Daboll. I think they're not aligned in what they're trying to do for this organization going forward. This offseason is going to be incredibly tumultuous between all of them.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Patricia Traynor dropped some info on it, and we're going to listen to that. And then when we come back after we hear from Patty, I'm going to give you a little bit of an interesting take why, from a macro standpoint, this is a dangerous, not really precedence, but it's dangerous, especially with people talking about it and chirping about it so much. Listen to Patricia from Locked On Giants.
The Giants will never admit this. The biggest one, in my opinion, is the financials, because the Giants, with their salary cap situation, according to Over the Cap, we'll take a look at their space here. The Giants have $2.865 million in cap space, which is the third lowest amount of all the NFL teams. They have tapped out as far as restructuring deals. All right. It's week 11 now of the season. I don't think they're going to restructure deals. I think they're going to roll with what they've got and just hope that what they have left is going to carry them through to the end of the regular season. It should be enough. Should be. It's the key word.
Yeah. So a part of me can understand. Why put yourself in a situation where if he gets hurt, you got to give him $23 million guaranteed if you're going to move on? I get it, but that's a part of the hazard of this situation. Now they could easily just say, "Look, we're paying him. We're paying him. We're just making sure that he doesn't get hurt so he can hit free agency next year. And he doesn't hit free agency without. But then Daniel's like, no, if I'm still the best guy, you need to play me. And as Dexter Lawrence says, he's quarterback one. Here's the dangerous precedent. It's not really, like I said, a precedent because this has been done before. This is CBA, it's collective bargaining agreement, right? And they have this antitrust exemption. It's not the WWE. They've involved gambling, and we all do gambling advertising. But can you really under these circumstances, regardless of the situation, not play a guy when technically you're actually supposed to be putting your best foot forward every week, trying to win every game? I think it's dangerous, especially with the gambling angle. And I think the league at some point might say, you can't not play a guy for fear of what you might think would happen just because you signed a contract. You know, don't put it in the contract. If that's the deal, then guess what? We got a big problem. We got a real big problem. And you know what? The last thing you want is Congress sneaking around saying, hey, man, what's going on? You know, y'all can't be doing that because that antitrust exemption means a lot.
I'm totally with you. This goes kind of beyond just what the Giants are doing, right? Like this is a macroeconomic type of discussion that you have to have. And I think it leads, Wig, to when do they stop paying quarterbacks? Is this going to be the bubble? Is this the bubble that's going to burst finally where it's like we're either just going to move off of our guy or if he's a top 5, we'll pay him. And we don't want to get in this Daniel Jones situation where we are stuck here with $40 million on the book and be the Giants 2.0. I think a lot of teams are going to look themselves in the mirror when it's time to pay their quarterback and say, are we on the Daniel Jones side of the argument or are we on the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes side of the argument? Because it has to burst at some point. It's the next guy up. You walk in, it's like just hanging out at your local soup kitchen. Like you just go up with a plate and you're going to get paid if you're a quarterback at this rate, right? Like it has to stop. And hopefully Daniel Jones is that guy. But even as an Eagles fan, I kind of feel bad for him, man. Like you can't say Tommy DeVito is better than him and Drew Lock right now. Those guys playing in New York, I'd be PO'd too, man.
Yeah, and then it looks like, you know, the optics is you're trying to tank for a high pick of certain high-profile athletes and quarterbacks, and it all starts to look. It's not the same as load management. Load management in the NBA is because they want those guys healthy for the playoffs, and that's almost saying like there's too many games, right? And usually that comes from the owners too, and players get blamed for it. But this is a little bit different, man, and it smells funny. But the weird part about it, I understand it, why the Giants are doing it. I'm thinking like I might do the same damn thing if the rules let me get away with it. I'll tell you what happened last night, though. Last night, trap game. Cleveland got beat. I mean, Pittsburgh got beat by Cleveland. And guess what? The last 9 times they played, Cleveland's won 8 of them. Listen to Chris Carter. And we talked about this just yesterday, man, about not being a trap game, not overlooking anybody. I don't care what George Pickens says. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a hard time beating their rival. Listen to this.
All right, Steelers fans, it is not a victory Friday. It is what do you call this? A defeat Friday, I guess is what you'd call it. But either way, the Steelers lose to the Cleveland Browns 24-19. We said all week this wasn't going to be a trap game. This is just going to be a game they were going to have to gut out. You knew it was going to be tough. You knew it was going to be weird. You knew it was going to be physical. And that's what it came down to. The snow came down. The mistakes were on both sides. Sloppy play on both sides. The Browns got the edge in the end. The Steelers not able to come up with the victory in this one on the road. But the thing that I think that you got to point to if you're the Steelers is this team needs to know who it is and who it wants to be in the biggest moments on third down and fourth down.
That's a very good point. It's hard to imagine a Pittsburgh team not having an identity. However, the problem with them, and I love the team, and I don't think, Tyler said, Tyler Rowland, who hosts the AM show, said they can't be trusted. I don't think that's it. I think they just lost a football game to a rival. And the bottom line is they have a very small variance, a very small window where they cannot screw up, because if they get off track just a little bit, it seems like the whole thing goes out the road.
I think we saw that last night, right, Wig? Like when the offense can't get going, and talk about the offense, that's not an offense that scores 28 to 35 points a game. They're hoping we get to 20 and our defense, which is our identity, can win that game. But when it's a rivalry in the elements, you got to throw that out. I mean, that's any division that you're in, you throw the record book out, right? And I kind of agree with Ty. Like, how do you trust Russell Wilson and Justin Fields when they're doing like a college 2-quarterback system at times? And I know there was the snow to come into play, but I got to see that trusting element out of the offense. The defense is all world. Like, they're going to win you a Super Bowl if you can get there. But Jameis Winston, man, like, y'all let him beat you last night when you had bigger aspirations. That's questionable. I'll say that.
Yeah, Jameis will do that to you now. The thing is, though, next week he might throw 4 interceptions because he just Jameis is the funniest person by accident I've ever seen in my life, and that's also indicative in his play. One minute he can look like the greatest quarterback ever. The next minute he can look like, man, what are you doing? Are you trying to make a comedy special or something? And that's just Jameis Winston. We're gonna get into more of that. Talk about another quarterback, Justin Herbert. Has he started to do enough to garner MVP consideration, or is it just his team's winning, so everybody thinks that? We're going to talk about it. I kind of think he's done a little bit to put himself in that category. We'll talk about that and more here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by BetterHelp. Man, it's the holiday season, but believe it or not, there are people that don't really understand or know right now that they have things to be thankful for. Trying to spend time with family while working, still dealing with things that have happened to them, maybe loss of life, maybe pain management. Sometimes you get knocked off your square and you have no idea how to get it back. Well, this month is all about gratitude, and along with the people that you love, there are other people we don't thank enough sometimes. That is ourselves. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month if you are considering therapy. Today's show is also brought to you and sponsored by Game Time, man. That's right, man. They're in a ticket you can't get on Game Time. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, man, because it has worked for me. And I don't care if you have to buy those tickets at the last minute. Ain't nobody going to tell you that your lack of planning is not their emergency. Not at Game Time. Game Time, they embrace that. They thrive when you show up late because they have a curation process that can get you the ticket that you want anytime at any place, right? Seat views, the lowest price guarantee, all of that at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Got my man Gino sitting up in here with me in the barbershop, gossiping and getting all up in everybody's business. Well, we're going to go out west and start with the Chargers, who are playing a brand of football that a lot of teams, including the team that Gino covers every day, Philly, with Louis DiBiase. They are on a roll because they're playing defense, they're running the football, and they're managing the football game. Now, Harbaugh might be a little bit better at game management decisions than, say, Nick Sirianni, but they do have some similarities. And Justin Herbert starting to garner a little bit of MVP consideration. Listen to the guys from Locked On Chargers.
I would argue that Justin Herbert has been as hot as any quarterback over the last 5 weeks, but after a slow start, can Justin Herbert get into the MVP race, especially considering how well he's played?
Man, can he get into the MVP race? I think obviously looking into it and looking really like deep into the stats and where he is in comparison to some of the other like winning quarterbacks, you know, that are on really good teams, guys like Lamar Jackson, guys like Jared Goff, guys like Josh Allen, who are all on, you know, fantastic football teams that are very much going to be vying for the playoffs and a Super Bowl berth. Like, that's what those type of teams have shown us already this season, that they're on that trajectory. And looking at what Justin Herbert has done, at least recently, I think he's definitely starting to knock on that door to get into that conversation.
I got to tell you now, the other day I put Saquon Barkley in there. So, you know, I got to play nice with you. So just to know I included your man in my top three. Talk about that, though. You think Herbert can do enough, or has he done enough to even be considered for the MVP?
It wasn't an accident. I threw the Oregon sweatshirt on and the hat on before this because I
look at
ride
dog.
with my guy, man. That's Jay Herbo. I've been waiting for this breakout to happen, but no, I really think there is this East Coast bias where it takes a little bit longer for those West Coast teams to get into the conversation. But just shout out to Harbaugh having his beat on the pulse of what Justin Herbert does really well and getting that defense ready to go. I 100% agree, simply because look at the guys that Justin is throwing to. We
Yeah.
wanted to write Quentin Johnson out of the league last year because of all the drops that he had. Yeah, you're one of them, right, Wig? And
Mhm.
he has come back and put up a season that he's taking care of the football in a division where you got to win those games with the Chargers there, right? And the Broncos are no pushover. And he's performing as good as any quarterback in that division, and let alone the AFC. I think Josh Allen is probably the other guy. It's going to go to a quarterback. Wig, I appreciate you tossing Saquon in there. Probably an offensive player of the year candidate, but it's the quarterback award. We know that. If they get to the playoffs
Mhm.
and maybe they win a game or two, how do you keep him out of that conversation? From the turnaround of what he was under Brandon Staley to what Harbaugh has done, complete 180.
I love the fact that these coaches are now realizing that just because you have this mercurial talent at quarterback doesn't mean that you need to just let him throw it 50 times a game. Oh, we got to get behind our guy. They're treating everybody like they're the Michael Jordan of football these days. And when you think about it, the GOAT, Tom Brady, in his best statistical seasons with New England, they didn't win crap. They only won when they had all of this balance and they were playing defense and management. So they've taken a page out of that, and maybe the page out of Troy Aikman. Like, okay, just because you have a great talent, you still have to do all of these other things well. And then in those key moments, that's when you let him loose and you let him go out and do things. But trying to do that the entire game, that's a problem. And that segues right into the drafting of Caleb Williams and how he is a dude that everybody talks about. He can whip it. He's Patrick Mahomes. Well, he doesn't. Early in his career this season, he hasn't been taking the easy stuff. He's trying to make everything too difficult. And Thomas Brown actually took over play calling after they fired the offensive coordinator. And Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears seemed to think that some pre-snap motion and some other things showed well, even in a loss against Green Bay. Check out what Lauren has to say.
If you look at specifically this game against the Green Bay Packers, it was the most pre-snap motion the Chicago Bears had used in any game so far this season. A season high in Caleb Williams' pass attempts with pre-snap motion. A season high in Caleb Williams' number of completions on plays with pre-snap motions. And I think the more specific area you can see the impact is that on passing plays where they sent a player in motion before the snap, Caleb Williams' average time to throw against the Packers was under 2 seconds. And on plays with pre-snap motion, he threw to his first read on 90% of those plays. It allowed him to see more of what the defense was doing pre-snap so that he could make a quicker decision post-snap and get the ball in the hands of his playmakers. That's the big difference of Thomas Brown opening things up more with that pre-snap motion.
Now, I'm one of those people that believes that players don't ruin organizations, right? I think bad organizations ruin players. I wish we could really go back over time and have some sort of machine where you could put all the failed quarterbacks in and point out which ones are actually really ruined by bad organizations. But so far, after 1 week, the Thomas Brown experiment seems to be a little bit better, getting a little bit of better results for Caleb.
Yeah, let's just hold off on writing off the first overall pick from now on. Like, let's let development play out, and coming into a place where we were just talking about Herbert, who was he throwing to? Caleb Williams really doesn't have any excuses, but there has to be that trust between you and your offensive play caller, right? And I see a guy in Caleb Williams who he has those Superman moments. If he doesn't trust the guy calling the plays, he's probably going to say, oh, I'm going to go and try be Superman for
All
good
day.
or for worse, right?
Mhm.
And now hopefully Thomas Brown can come in there and give him some stability, because all you have to do is let his confidence cook and then get him into that NFL speed. I think that's really what it is, right? He's still a rookie quarterback. Yes, he was touted as a generational prospect, But folks, it's the Chicago Bears. Like, we know how they are with quarterbacks. Like, we saw Mitch Trubisky. We've seen Jay Cutler in his entire career. It's not always perfect there. Let things play out. I think Caleb will be just fine. And I think Brown, you're showing good things. Like, you have it, once you fire the coordinator, if it looks the same, it's probably your head coach's fault. But now you're seeing some different things in there, which hopefully help Caleb out.
I think these young guys just have to realize Batman spent more time being Bruce Wayne than he did Batman, right? In that uniform. And Clark Kent spent way more time being Clark Kent than he did being Superman. And you don't have to do it all the time. You just have to pick and choose when you do it. Speaking of quarterbacks that play like Superman, Anthony Richardson got his job back last week, and the results, while it hurt my fantasy team because they kept giving him the ball on the 1 yard line because I had Taylor, the running back, that kid really did play pretty well. And now there might be a little bit more renewed optimism as the coach try to make a playoff run and get a wild card. We'll discuss that and more. A whip around the National Football League to see who Gino thinks going to win these games. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Built Rewards. That's right, man. Listen, Built Rewards it's the absolute truth, and it's making paying your rent a little bit easier to take and deal with. All right. If you're renting and if you heard of Built, B-I-L-T, you're about to thank me if you never heard of it, because earning points on your rent is now real. That's right. When you pay your rent through Built, B-I-L-T, you don't even have to check with your landlord to start earning points that you can use towards flights, hotels, fitness classes, and even your next rent payment. Ooh, I like that. There's no cost to join Built. And as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. You need to go check it out, man. Start earning points on your rent that you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. I'm going to let you know what it is. I'm going to spell it for you. That's joinbuilt, joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure you use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points on your rent payments today. Third segment here on a Friday show. I got my man Gino dressed all up in his Ducks. Now, when you buy Ducks gear, I got to ask that. They got 17 million uniforms. Do you have a whole bunch of combinations, or you just got one hat and one polo? Or do you have a closet full of a whole bunch of Oregon gear?
No, I could get lost in the weeds on it. I only have a few. I see people that buy every single jersey. You're crazy. Great commitment to the school. I just love the team. I'll give you a couple, but if you're not playing good football, I'm not going to support them. But hey, man, we're undefeated this year on a good run. So yeah, only a few though.
Undefeated on a good run. Speaking of being on the run, that's what Anthony Richardson does real well. He lost the job because he ran so much he got tired and tapped out of a game. Well, they went back to him after Joe Flacco showed you finally that he is 78 years old and he probably shouldn't be the lead quarterback for anybody. And he actually played pretty good, did Anthony Richardson last week. Hopefully they can sustain it and make a playoff run. Listen to the guys from Locked On Colts talk about his performance.
This young quarterback coming back from being benched was able to take all of that and put together his best performance of his entire career and lead an 8-point comeback victory in the fourth quarter against, again, a quarterback who is a legend in his own right. So this was everything we needed. Like, this was the perfect Sunday for Colts fans, for us here at Locked On Colts. This was every single thing we needed from this Colts team in this one. Now, again, the big next step for this team is let's stack some performances. Let's stack good offensive performances and feel really good about Richardson going into this next offseason, or heck, even the playoffs if they really get rolling. I'm not saying it's completely out the window, but it's still a possibility for this team. But just keep stacking the good games and let's go from here, man. Like this.
I'm gonna get your opinion on Anthony Richardson, and then I'm gonna give you the bad news about Anthony Richardson. Go ahead.
I think he's the right guy to play. Excuse me. I don't think playing a guy as old as Flacco is the way to go in the NFL in this current day and age. And this isn't a team where your starting quarterback goes out and then your backup quarterback goes out and you're like, all right, let's call up Joe Flacco and get him off the couch like the Cleveland Browns did last year. You have Anthony Richardson, who is, I mean, you put all of this investment in the kid. He only had less than 300 passes in the NFL by the time that you benched him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that is all about. Yes, you can't tap yourself out of a game if you're a quarterback, but if you have any sense of football and you're looking at these two guys and you see Joe Flacco as a statue, can't move, and then you see AR just doing some Josh Allen things, even as a runner, like let him do what he does well. That's not a bad thing. I trust the Florida guy, somebody who's big, tough, athletic. Yeah, he's still very raw, but that's a young team. That's not an older team that's aging out. That's a team that they have some young weapons. They need to get right under Shane Steichen. Trust the young quarterback. I don't know why you ever go to Flacco, man. Great backup, but let's call it what it is.
If Tua stays healthy, Miami could push for that last spot. But Denver is right there with their rookie quarterback, and I think they have a little bit of a better shot because they're playing more complementary football than the Colts. They mentioned that you got to string these victories together. Here's the bad news. The Colts play the Lions this week, and ain't no trap games because Detroit kills flies with sledgehammers. And we're going to get right into predicting these games. Go ahead and go with it. Can Anthony Richardson last against the Detroit Lions?
I don't think so. I don't think it's as bad of a beating as your team took last week. I think.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
AFC South, it's a tough matchup for them, but Detroit is legit. Anthony Richardson, I think, has a really good opportunity, though, to make some big things happen with his legs. Still the Lions game to lose.
We talked about Chicago and Caleb Williams. They host Minnesota. So both of these young guys are hosting two of the really, really good teams in what I think is the best division in football. Do you think the Vikings can take the Bears?
Big game for Brian Flores, right? You're going up against the new play caller, somebody you only have a week of tape on. Should be a little bit different. I think it'll be close. It's one of those divisional games that you kind of throw out the record book. Minnesota is a team that I think a lot of people are still underappreciating. It's a really good defense. They work within the system of their offense. I think that team is not slowing down anytime soon.
Speaking of Tua, they are at home. I'm sure the Patriots could use a little bit of game in the sun. New England goes down to Miami. What do you think is going to happen?
I think Miami's a team to watch out for. As of recent, since Tua has been back, like the AFC not having that solidified 7th wildcard spot, that's going to be a tough out for whoever's the second team in the AFC. If you were to have to host Miami and you get McDaniel on the right week, man, and he was in his bag last week, said that when Max Crosby jumped offside, they didn't even have a plays call. He's got that confidence back. I trust what Miami's doing down there, especially against the Patriots, man. That I don't know how they keep staying in games, but hey, Drake May looks pretty good.
Yep, at the top of the show, we talked about the Giants and their fiasco with Danny Dimes. They're going to roll DeVito out at quarterback, and they got a tough game against Tampa coming to New York.
Tampa's got to get right. This is the time Mike Williams comes back. Tommy DeVito, he's one of those guys who's a frisky quarterback. I'm sure you'll get some renewed sense of optimism in their offense, but I don't trust the Giants as far as I can throw them right now.
Yep, and I suspect we'll see a wild outfit from Tommy DeVito's agent, as we always do whenever he's playing. Dallas, another trouble franchise, goes to Washington, an up-and-coming franchise who has Dallas's old defensive coordinator as head coach.
This is the Dan Quinn revenge game, right? I don't see those guys sitting back and laying off the pedal at all, man. That's a Dallas team that's down bad, and a Washington team that after the bye week, after losing to Philadelphia, they got to keep winning. This NFC, there's a lot of teams that are going to be at 7-8 wins after this week. Washington can't continue this skid. I think they go in there and win.
The Chiefs have a lot of things that they need to work on offense, and I think they have a good week to do it. And I'm not going to even talk smack about Carolina, man, because Carolina the last month has played better, but I think they have a problem coming into Charlotte this week.
I think this is going to be a weird game. I think it's going to be close for a little bit just because of the emotion after that Buffalo game for the Chiefs. But then they're going to be like, what are we doing, guys? Like, we're playing with our food. Let's lock in. And I think they put up like 18 to 21 points in the second half.
In that AFC South that you talked about earlier, Houston seems like they have gotten back on track, especially with Nico Collins being back. They host the Tennessee Titans. Are
The
you really
Titans are
thinking
weird
about this?
team.
Are you really? You don't have to.
I don't. All right, I'm not hosting with Tyler. I'm not hosting with Tyler. No,
I know you don't have to pretend, man. Go ahead. Tyler Rowland is not here. The madman ain't gonna say nothing to you. I know you ain't sitting there sighing and taking deep breaths.
No, all right,
about this game.
We're gonna go with D'Amico. We're gonna go with that Houston team. I think that with Nico Collins back, man, he's got to be rip roaring and ready to go coming off of what he was doing before that injury. That's a really good football team, and they got to go and crush that division, man.
All right, Denver, who we mentioned earlier, being one of those teams chasing the playoffs, they go to the desert to face the Raiders.
Another AFC West, like throw the record book out. I think what the Broncos are doing is legit. Like the way that they're winning football games, it's not just because of luck. Like they have a legitimately good defense that's locked in. Bo is not turning the ball over right now. I know I'm going heavy on the favorites, but I just think we're at the point in the season where if you want to be a legit contender, you got to get the job done against these teams.
No doubt about it. The 49ers are banged up. We're wondering, we talked about it on the show 2 days ago, are they ever going to get it? Or if it is what it is. This is the 49ers. They're banged up and they're getting old and their window might be closing. They go up to Green Bay to play the Packers.
This is their kryptonite, right? This is the Packers' kryptonite. Yeah. I don't trust a non-healthy San Francisco team. If the defense was fully healthy and they could stop the run the way they did in the last couple seasons, I would say yes. But Green Bay in the elements, a team coming from sunny California, I think you just play the weather on this one and go with Green Bay.
Yep, I agree with you. In a very interesting game, probably one of the hottest contested games with a lot of ramifications. Arizona goes up to the Pacific Northwest and plays Seattle.
I hate that I keep saying this, but I really like what Jonathan Gannon is doing with the Arizona Cardinals. I trust him way more over that Seattle team, which is a roller coaster. Someday you're going to get them at the beginning of the ride where they're not taking off. And then some days you get them at the top and they're hotter than anybody in football. Arizona, consistent. And they've been scrappy against some good teams. I still remember that week 1 game where they went up to Buffalo and almost beat them. That is a team that I like what they're doing out there in the desert.
I like what they're doing too. Monty Austin Ford might have some consideration as, well, Howie Roseman's going to get it, but he'll be one of those top 3 guys to get Executive of the Year. Speaking of Howie Roseman, the Eagles go out to play the LA Rams on Sunday night.
Talk about a trap game. This might be one for the Eagles. Yeah. I think this is one where Sean McVay is going to have things dialed up, and if they want any chance to stay in this NFC race, they probably are going to have to win it. But there's one grumpy old Italian guy sitting up in the booth who happens to be the guy that Sean McVay can't get the better of. It's Vic Fangio into that defense. You got 2 high-profile offenses. I think this is a defensive battle. I think Fangio really has to lock in and get this team right. I could see the Rams winning, but I'm going to go with my Birds, of course.
Yeah, and Baltimore seems like they're in a big game every week. The Monday night game, for all of the reasons, it's Harbaugh versus Harbaugh. It's the old staff versus, they're like cousins. Everybody in the back office is all like related. They all come from the same tree. Baltimore going out to play the Chargers.
Is this Justin Herbert's first game over like the big 3 quarterbacks that you really put him into the MVP consideration? I think so. Baltimore plays in these games where they always let teams hang around. They just keep that food on the line. And then one day that Gator's going to snap and grab that food and rip their arm off. This is a game where against Harbaugh, you can't turn the ball over one time. You can't have a bad drive. You got to be locked in. Battle of the Harbaughs. I'm giving it to LA, brother.
There you go. Good slate of games this week. My man, Gino. Gino, let everybody know where you can be found, man.
Yeah, check us out. Locked On Eagles. Me and my co-host, Louis DiBiase. Every week, we just hit our 1,500th episode as a duo yesterday, so we have been here for a long time. Check us all out at the Locked On Podcast Network. You know where Wig is at, too. Check me out on Twitter at GC24_football, and that's about it.
That's right. Locked On NFL in the morning with Tyler Rowland, too. It'll hit you across your head like a double shot of espresso. Make sure you check him out every single day in the morning and then double back in the barbershop and hang out with me. For Tony Wiggins and my man Gino Camilleri, we will see you. Have a very nice weekend. Check us out. I know I'll do a postcast this Sunday. Well, I ain't going to do no postcast because the Jaguars got to bye. You see, they're so dead, I'm walking around like a zombie, bro. I don't know when I'm supposed to record and when I'm not. That's a shame, man. Y'all take care of each other. We'll do the same.